it's an industry that I generally love. I have a passion for. I eat, sleep, I live for fitness.
No, you need to be obsessed. You need to wake up, think about it. You need to go to bed, think about your clients, think about your progress, think about what you can do better.
Genuinely, like, just be like patient and take your time. Like that is like, you've got to take it all in the right steps. You've got to nail what you do in person before you go online.
I don't like to talk about fear. The fears is usually something that makes your worries real.
Welcome to the Coaching Ignited podcast. I'm your host, Alex Povey. It's great to have you here. This show is all about peeling back the curtain on what's going to help you build the fitness business you truly want. And each week we bring on a new guest to share their stories, insights, and strategies so you too can take action and apply what you learn. The podcast is released every Wednesday on all the major platforms, including Spotify and iTunes. So make sure you go give that a subscribe, guys. Now, if you're a personal trainer in a commercial gym with 500 plus members and you want to fast track your income growth and learn how to sign multiple new clients a week, reach out to me personally through Facebook or Instagram and just drop me a private message so we can get the conversation started and see if you could be a good fit for one of our programs. All the links to my social can be found in the show notes so you can connect with me there. Now let's get into this week's episode. Enjoy the show. Hey, so welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I've done a couple of shows just on my own for the last couple of episodes, but today we've got a guest on. We've got Jake Kauffman, and this is a very interesting podcast today because we go deep into the mindset and coaching. Jake actually helps coaches and consultants with personal development, mindset work, and really just digging deeper into coaching practices to help people get better results. So he deals with addressing basically personal problems that spill into people's businesses and create business problems. So this is a very interesting show. Really looking forward for us to get into this one. If you do enjoy it, would love if you could maybe leave a little review or share it on your stories and really just spread the message a little bit more so more people can hear this really good show that Jake has spent time putting together with me. All right, let's get into it. All right, so we're live. Want to welcome you onto the podcast, Jake.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So we were just geeking out on sleep, weren't we, just before this podcast. If anyone's watching this back on the replay, you can see that Jake's wearing some blue light glasses. We were geeking out, huh?
Oh, totally. It's so funny too, but also so perfect because Sam Ovens, if you're familiar, he runs consulting.com. He's one of the most successful business coaches, online entrepreneurs out there. And when somebody asked him at a recent mastermind, I bought the streaming replay for this mastermind, and they asked him, what is the number one bit of advice that you would give to an entrepreneur? And he's like, without even a break, he said, getting enough sleep. And everybody was just so taken aback because they were like, oh, because entrepreneurs are notorious for not getting enough sleep, working all hours of the day. Like we talked about, working from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed. So I could talk about sleep for a while.
It's interesting that you name dropped Sam. I didn't know you were an advocate. Here's an interesting story. I started my whole business off the back of I think it was called the Consulting Accelerator or the Client Accelerator, something along those lines.
Sure.
I took his initial program, and then he's obviously got Up Level, then he's got Quantum Mastermind, which is what they speak about in the Quantum Mastermind, which is sleep, productivity, efficiencies, and all that stuff. Have you bought some of his programs, or are you just an advocate of his work?
I haven't bought any of his programs, but definitely an advocate of his work. I mean, his success speaks for itself, but whenever you dig into any of his content, you realize that this guy really cares, and the person that he is and how he shows up for people is something that I admire about him.
He's almost robot-like, isn't he? He's almost like superhuman, but he's very much a geek when it comes to sleep. He's actually done a video. Anyone that's really interested in sleep, one of the things I did when I was trying to optimize for like my sleeping patterns and my quality of REM sleep is I was searching the internet for videos, and Sam actually has one where he goes through all these different gadgets and things that he uses. And we were speaking about the regulator, the heat regulator. He gives you two options. So I think he's got like one that he puts in his bed, and then he's got like one for the room temperature. So anyone that's a sleep geek and wants to check that out, highly recommend looking at Sam Evans. But we've gone a little bit off course as to how we normally start these podcasts, which is completely cool, because I said today we're just going to freestyle this one. But I'd love to give people a bit of a context who are listening as to like who you are, Jake. Like, why did you get started in the fitness industry and coaching? And the journey you went on, and what it is that you actually do now.
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate you asking that, because people often mistake me for a fitness coach, and I'm not actually a fitness professional. I'm a coach for online health and fitness professionals. And what I coach them on is not only their own personal development, but how to support their clients with their ongoing personal development. Because in the fitness space, when you think about it, everything that online health and fitness coaches are supporting their clients with is fitness related, has to do with their physical well-being, their nutrition, their diet, all of these behavior patterns that are being driven by an underlying core belief about themselves, about other people, or about the world, and how they fit into the world and those relationships that they have in their everyday life. And it's those beliefs that dictate our behavior patterns. So I often joke that, online health and fitness coaches, they're secretly undercover mindset coaches, but where are they getting the knowledge, the experience of how to best support their clients in a way that will have them experience long-lasting and sustainable results?
So how did you get into that? Take us back to the journey of you getting to this point. Because I can't imagine this is something that you think about in school. Hey, I want to be this person I am today. Because we want to think I want to be an astronaut, a lawyer, an accountant, a race car driver, a rocket man. Yeah. Right? we have these kind of like random ambitions when we're younger, and then obviously like life takes us on this journey and we find ourselves in these unique situations. Like I personally never thought I would be in this situation right now where I do what you do. I coach online trainers and I coach in-person PTs how to build their businesses. I envisage this.
Sure.
What's about your journey of getting to this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. So rewind 5 years ago, I was living in Chicago. I currently live in Los Angeles. I was in the fine dining restaurant industry, and I woke up one day and I knew that I was meant for so much more. And I wasn't happy what I was doing because I knew I was meant for so much more. And so I kind of went on a personal development journey that brought me out to California, invested in I'll call it a personal development workshop, but it really is so much more than that. It's kinesthetic learning, where they put you into experiences that portray how you show up in different areas of your life. And the thing that I took away from that is how we do one thing is how we do anything. And what is true for how we show up in our personal life is also true for how we show up in our professional life. And so I just got hooked, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to invest my time in to become a better person, to reach my highest potential. And so it actually ended up moving me out to California. And throughout this time, I was working in healthcare, which is my background, since having moved out to California. Meanwhile, I was constantly investing in my own personal growth and my own personal transformation because I knew that I was capable of so much more than what I was doing at the time, and that it really came down to me investing in myself, in my own mental, emotional, spiritual growth in order to take me to where I was capable of going. And so it was really just a passion project, for lack of a better phrase, for the longest time. And eventually I ended up being a volunteer coach, a volunteer mentor out here in several different leadership programs, personal development programs. And then it was the summer of 2018 that I left healthcare to go into coaching full time. And when I was making that transition, I ended up working for a fitness business coach, an online fitness business coach that, like yourself, taught online personal trainers, health and wellness coaches how to start, run, and grow and scale their business. So I was supporting him with running the back end of his business, and his clients were just like you, online health and fitness professionals. And I ended up supporting them with their mindset, with their own personal transformation, realizing that people don't actually have business problems. People just have personal problems that bleed into their business, that prevent them from taking risks, that inhibit them from scaling their business, that have them run into mindset blocks that prevent them from moving forward in one way or the other in their business. And we can give them new and different strategies all day long, but as long as those strategies are being executed with the exact same mindset, they're going to continue to get the same results, and the same patterns are going to continue to repeat themselves. And this is what we see in every area of people's lives, right? If we don't learn the lesson, we only stand to repeat it, right? So I often joke that, when people move across the country, they think that a new place is going to change them, but they're bringing who they are today and their mindset with them. And so they end up attracting the same type of people, the same type of, opportunities or breakdowns, even though they moved potentially across the country or sometimes even across the world. And so this is what I support my clients with today, because if we're constantly looking to simply treat the external, right? The external being the person's physical fitness, lose the weight, gain the muscle, optimize for the nutrition. If all we're doing is treating the external and we're not treating the internal, it's not a matter of if and when we're going to sabotage and return to our former state. It's just a matter of when.
I love what you said about people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that bleed into their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Maybe even a case study of someone that you've worked with, or a scenario that you've encountered where people have got these really deep-rooted personal problems, and it's affecting their business. Because I see this all the time, and it's a bit of a coincidence that the last couple of coaching calls that I was doing with my clients, we spent probably 95% of the call not speaking about tactics, strategies, systems, because they already know all that stuff. They've already been taught it. We're talking about, why are you not executing on some of these things when you know you need to, right? Because you're slowing down your progress, and you could be moving forward way faster if you changed that programming that you have in your mind and eradicated some of those personal things that you've got going on that are bleeding into your business. So I'd love for you to kind of like unpack maybe something that's happened, just so the listeners can maybe resonate with something that they're doing that needs to be addressed that's affecting their business.
Absolutely, totally. And it's no accident that you used the percentage that you did, 95%. I'm going to play off of that, because what most people don't understand is that 95% of our behavior patterns, our decisions, and our actions are dictated by our subconscious mind. Only 5% of our daily action is determined by our conscious mind. And why this is important to understand is because your conscious mind is responsible for what you say you want, but it's your subconscious mind that is responsible for what you do. So like you said, people know what they need to be doing. They know the strategies that they need to be taking or the action steps that they need to grow and scale their business, but something is getting in the way from them taking that action and executing on that knowledge. What that tells me is that something in their subconscious is overriding the action, the behavior that they need to take in order to get the result that they say they actually want. And until we dig beneath the surface into what is going on in their subconscious mind, they're going to continue to run into this invisible barrier that is preventing them from moving forward. I'll give you a really good example. But before I do, I want to talk about trauma for a quick second, because we've all experienced trauma, right? Whether it's acute trauma, chronic trauma, acute being like an accident or assault or abuse or something like that. But that's actually the rarest form of trauma. What is extremely common is loneliness, isolation, getting let go from a job or getting fired, experiencing a breakup, for example, sickness, illness, something that we've all experienced at some point in time in our lives that then gets embedded into our subconscious, right? We create beliefs because of these experiences that ultimately on down the road dictate how we show up. And why this is important to understand is that trauma wires our brain for protection. Trauma wires our brain for protection. Whereas our spirit, our true and authentic self, for example, is wired to create and to evolve and to develop over time. But if there's unresolved trauma that we've experienced that we haven't healed from, it's going to override that desire, that innate ability to step into creation and vision and whatever it is that we say we want, right? So this is why how I support my clients is so powerful, because like you said, you can get on a call and you can spend the entire call talking about strategy, tactics, all of these things. But as long as that unresolved subconscious trauma and the resulting beliefs are still there, it's not going to matter. And translate this into a fitness example. Yo-yo dieting and binge eating are two of the biggest problems in the fitness space. You ask any coach out there, and we see it all the time. They're able to get their clients really good results in the time spent working together with enough accountability and motivation and pushing and this like rah, you can do it. And almost like guilt tactics, even though they may not realize that that's what they're actually doing, they're going to get their clients results. They're going to lose the weight. But where are they 3 months, 6 months, a year after having worked with you? We see it all the time. Binge eating happens, old behavior patterns come back to the surface, and you have something like yo-yo dieting be as big of a problem as it is. So when I talk about the fact that people don't have business problems, they only have personal problems, there's always an underlying issue, right? The issue is never the actual issue. So for example, I was talking with a prospective client the other day, very similar to the situation that you described with your client. They know the action that they need to be taking in order to get the results that they say they want, and that they also know that they're capable of producing. Now, they were not sure of what was stopping them. And what was stopping them was actually asking people for the sale, right? At the end of the phone call, actually asking for the money. So they were great at guiding the prospective client into their vision, into their goals, evoking what was stopping them, preventing them from getting there, the type of support that they need in order to achieve that goal. And then it came time to actually have the conversation of what it would be like to work together and the investment and actually talk about the money. And they ran into this like invisible barrier every time that brought up anxiousness, worry, fear within them that caused them from stepping into that opportunity. And it had nothing to do with a lack of training or knowledge or ability. This person's been in the workforce for 15 years. They're almost 40 years old. They've had extensive amounts of training and experience being in the corporate world and now transitioning to being an online entrepreneur. What it really was a fear of rejection. And so we started to unpack this. Where does that fear of rejection come from? And what's more is he actually knew that it was the fear of rejection that was stopping him, right? Most of us know what's not working in our life, right? Or what our deeper issues are. That's not the issue. The issue is, where did it come from? And what are the resulting beliefs that we created around it? And that's what I ultimately support my clients with, is determining their core wound and their core conflict. The core wound is an experience that we had early on in our childhood that determines our subconscious set point. And our subconscious set point is merely our perspective, our worldview for how we see ourselves, other people, and the world. And that creates a core belief or a conflict within us that, if you take this prospective client as an example, evolves over time and on down the road ends up manifesting as a fear of rejection. So I'll give an example from my story. My core wound is an experience that I had when I was really young. I was lost for a period of time when I was with my family on vacation. So I was 2 years old. So as you can imagine, a 2-year-old is just learning how to walk, let alone talk. And so any experience like that is going to create some sort of residual trauma around abandonment, feeling left, isolation, things like that. And it caused this story that I don't belong here. So because I had this story in place, you can imagine how that ended up manifesting in my life and in my relationships on down the road. I felt like the black sheep in my family growing up. I never felt fully accepted and embraced by my friends. And that became the underwriting story that was recycling itself in my subconscious, that then just ended up manifesting itself in my behavior, in my actions, in my decisions, and then showed up, of course, in my results, right? Because when you think about the results that you have today in your fitness business, for example, the amount of money that you make, the number of clients that you have, even the amount of money that you charge, the programs that you have in place, all of your results are tied back to a belief, because our belief dictates our thoughts, and our thoughts dictate how we feel about ourselves. And of course, how we feel determines how we show up every day. If I don't feel good, I'm most likely not going to take action that is out of alignment with those feelings. Typically, the action that we take is in direct alignment with our feelings, right? Our actions, our decisions, and then those are the very behavior patterns that end up getting us our results. So if we have a belief in place, for example, like with myself, I don't belong here, that's going to constantly cause me to feel lonely, isolated, sad, and that's going to dictate how I feel about myself and about other people as well. Because all I'm going to do is end up looking at other people and thinking that they don't truly accept me. Because if I don't truly belong here, how can people actually accept me? And so how that showed up in my behavior patterns was recycling groups of friends. I would get into a romantic relationship, and every 6 months, I would somehow subconsciously sabotage the relationship, create problems that weren't even there, because I don't belong here. This isn't meant for me, this relationship, this situation, this opportunity. I was fired from every job I ever had. Every professional job I've ever had, I've been fired. Because at some point in time on down the road, I ended up running into this belief that I don't belong here, right? So if you think about this in terms of somebody's fitness, if they have an underlying belief, right, a core conflict that's continually subconsciously recycling itself, like I'm a disappointment, for example, which is one of the core conflicts that I ran into with a client recently. If that is her core conflict, you can imagine how that's going to show up in her physiology, right? Because our brain is only responsible for storing 5% of our memory of what's happened to us. The other 95% is stored in our body as emotions. So you can imagine the behavior patterns that she created as a result of this conflict that was just running in the background that she was unaware of, right? It had her adopt unhealthy eating patterns, gain weight, right? Which had her struggle with her energy, with motivation, right? So she was really only scratching the surface of her potential, meanwhile wondering the entire time, what's wrong with me? Even after she lost the weight, because that belief was still there. And so even though it wasn't showing up in her physical body, it continued to manifest itself elsewhere in her relationships, in her wealth, in her professional life, with her job. And so we see this all the time, and it's ever more present in the fitness industry, because how many people do we see get incredible results with their fitness, their body, their physique, but yet they're still deeply struggling with insecurity? Transformation is not an outside-in job. It's an inside-out job.
I want to ask you two things, Jake.
Yeah.
Number one is, people listening to this right now, they may be resonating with what you're saying and go, oh, that sounds like me, or Jake sounds like me, or I've been through that, or I've been through this.
Yeah.
How do people identify, number one, these personal, deep-rooted belief systems that are not serving them?
Yep.
And then number two, how do they reprogram and overcome them? So how are you able to do that?
Yep.
What is that process? So the identification and the reprogramming and overcoming of those maybe negative belief systems that are not serving us.
Yeah, great question. Really easy answer for the first one is you have to have a guide, right? We are incapable of tapping into our subconscious mind by ourselves. Like it is virtually impossible for us to do. So that guide can look a bunch of different ways, right? It can be talking to a therapist. It can be hiring a coach that specifically specializes in this area. It can be hypnotherapy, for example. So those are all things that are meant to bring the subconscious to the conscious level, because until you do, it's going to continue to stay in your subconscious, repeat itself, and you're going to call it fate.
Before we move on, Jake, can we just confirm to people, like, distinguish the subconscious and the conscious in like layman's terms, for people to get like what those two things are? Because they're probably thinking, well, what is the subconscious? Isn't it just my mind and it's one thing? Can we just distinguish that before we move on?
Yep, absolutely. So your conscious mind is responsible for, like I said, only 5% of your behavior. But it really consists of basically the daily, how can I best phrase this? Your conscious mind consists of the decisions that we make that we are aware of why we do them, right? And it's always interesting, especially from a fitness perspective, when I ask people why they go to the gym, they're always stumped. They're like, well, I just do. But why? That's what our subconscious mind is. Our subconscious mind is the underwriting motivation for why we do things. Our conscious mind is responsible for willpower, right? Go to the gym, eat this food, implement this strategy into your business. That is all your conscious mind, but your subconscious mind is responsible for motivation. And it's responsible for our perceptions, our reactions, our belief systems, how we see and experience ourselves, other people, and the world, right? And we may not realize this because it's so easy to run on autopilot all day, every day, because our brain is designed to do that, right? To avoid cognitive overload, which is why we're only capable of, I think, roughly 240, 50 conscious decisions every day before we go into decision fatigue.
I love what you said there about autopilot.
Yep.
Because this is super interesting, and just to give people a very relatable understanding of what you're speaking about is with the conscious and the unconscious. When you're learning to drive a car, you're conscious.
Correct.
About learning, I need to shift this gear, I need to press this pedal.
Yep.
I need to hold this at the same time.
Yep.
And then once you pass your test, it's then passed after time to the subconscious mind.
Yep.
And then you notice yourself sometimes driving, but getting to a destination and you've lost your mind for like 5 or 10 minutes. And like, I wasn't even thinking and I'm over here. It's like,
I'm driving.
Yeah, I'm driving. right? Because your subconscious mind is actually taken over, and it doesn't require any like conscious thinking for it to operate.
Yep.
And it's like the perfect comparison that you said. It's literally autopilot. Your subconscious is an autopilot that has been programmed with coordinates from the conscious mind, and then it takes over so that you don't burn out because you can't consciously think all the time.
Exactly. Yep. Your brain would go into overload, right? So we actually have a thing that's called our reticular activating system. Think of it as like a filter, right? Your brain filters what actually is brought to the conscious level and deemed important enough to log into your memory. Now, there are always a few things that get through. As you can imagine, sex is one of them. Always gets through. So ladies, if you're listening and you ever experience a moment when your man doesn't appear to be listening to you, but the minute the physical is involved or sexual intimacy involved, he's all of a sudden like completely present, that's his reticular activating system. That's a good sign that his brain is working perfectly fine, because what you were saying to him prior wasn't important enough to make it past his reticular activating system into his conscious mind for him to actually then pay attention. But what you're talking about is conscious incompetence, right? When I'm learning a new skill or activity, there's a residual amount of resistance because you're learning a new skill, and it requires your conscious mind to be operating every step of the way, which is why it can actually feel like exhausting whenever you're learning a new skill, because for your brain, it's overload. But like you mentioned, when that thing becomes practiced, like driving, for example, or going to the gym consistently, that then gets passed on to conscious competence, and it gets embedded into your subconscious, right? This is where habits are stored, right? And we know this because it takes 60 to 90 days to create a habit. Every habit starts as a conscious decision, and then with enough repetition and consistency, then gets embedded into our subconscious to reduce the amount of activity that our brain is responsible for on the daily. And one thing I want to mention before I answer your second question is there's actually another layer that we haven't talked about, and that's your unconscious mind, right? So we've talked about the conscious and the subconscious, but we haven't talked about the unconscious mind, and that's different. Your unconscious mind is responsible for storing things like trauma. Now, the way that our ego is constructed, right? And your ego is simply a mechanism that your body uses to maintain homeostasis, safety, comfortability, predictability, right? This was a survival pattern. Trauma was a threat to your survival. So after we've experienced it, what does it do? It embeds itself in our unconscious mind, specifically and very, very intentionally, because if it stays in our unconscious mind, we are not aware of how it continues to impact us at the level of our actions and our decisions, how we relate to other people, how we show up in the world, all of which is responsible for, of course, our results. So as long as we have not done the healing work around unpacking our trauma, and this is where I'll segue into answering your next question, seeing how that very thing that happened to us was a gift, we will continue to recycle the negative emotion attached to that experience. Sadness, anger, resentment, whatever it may be, because 95% of our thoughts are recycled. So if you have experienced trauma, which again, we all have at some level, and you haven't dealt with it and healed it and now see it as the gift that it is, because it's created you into the person, into the gift that you are today, you will just continue to recycle the negative, painful emotion attached to it, and it will manifest itself in your results. So for me, I'll give you a great example. I was sexually abused when I was 13. I now am able to look back at that event and see it as one of the, if not the best things to ever happen to me. because it created my ability to serve people in the way that I do today. It gave me the gift of compassion and empathy that I now have to offer other people, because the last thing that I ever want to see is someone to experience the same pain that I did. And if they have, to continue to hold onto it in a way that holds them back from reaching their highest potential. So that is the kicker, is beginning the reframing process of how the painful and traumatic moments in our life were actually a gift. They actually served to make us stronger, to make us better, enabled us to become the people that we are today, set us on the trajectory that we now find ourselves on in a way that allows us to turn our pain into our purpose. So for me, it was beginning to unpack all of the beliefs that I created around, of course, my core wound, right? Going back to when I was really young, getting lost with my family. And then, of course, with my sexual abuse, determining all of the limitations and the negative beliefs that I created from those experiences. As you can imagine, I don't belong here, right? The core conflict that I created, but also I'm not lovable. I can't be myself. I'm not accepted. Being myself is not safe. And unpacking all of these beliefs that were residing at the subconscious level to then consciously create a new belief. Decide on a different perspective, which is, I am lovable. I am accepted. I am supported. Because before, I did not believe those things, because all that they served to do was remind me of the pain that I went through. So going back to the prospective client, we talked about him struggling to ask for the sale. That's not his real issue. The issue is never the issue, right? Like we talked about. It's that the action that he needs to take literally brings him back into alignment with the pain of his past that serves to bring up that fear of rejection. So it's like running into a brick wall. So until he reframes the experience that caused that fear in the first place, insofar that he now looks back at that experience and sees it as a gift, as something that made him better, as something that made him stronger, he will continue to resist growth, because all it does is serve to remind him of the fear that he continues to hold on to.
This is deep stuff, man.
It's the real work, right? It's the real work. You know?
So for people like yourself who've been through trauma, it's not just a case of waking up, acknowledging trauma, and going, okay, I'm going to decide to change my belief. So this is where we can kind of transition a little bit back into tactics and strategy, because clearly they have their role in everything that we do.
Of course.
You've got this acknowledgement, you've got this trauma, you know what it is. Now it's time to address it. What does that process look like? Is it continual work every day? Reprogramming specific affirmations, mantras? How does that process work, Jake?
Great question. It's first important to note that it starts with awareness, right? Because like we mentioned, as long as the unconscious remains unconscious, you'll continue to repeat it and you'll call it fate. So until we bring it to the conscious level, we can't ever expect to be able to break through it. So it first starts with awareness, but that's truly the first step in breakthrough, right? It's kind of like an epiphany, right? Where all of a sudden we become aware of something that used to stop us, that used to hold us back. And in the coaching space, it's something that's very dangerous, because people mistake an epiphany for actual breakthrough, right? Yes, you became aware of something that you were not aware of in the past. And that's the first step in breakthrough. So you had a breakthrough in awareness. But the breakthrough that we're all looking for, as I think we can both agree, is in our results, is in creating new results that is in alignment with our potential and what we know we're capable of if we're consistent, if we put in the work, if we dedicate ourselves to a worthy cause or a worthy ideal. So it first starts with awareness, but it really truly manifests itself when our actions and our decisions are out of alignment with who we used to be, and all of a sudden becomes in alignment with who we're committed to becoming and what we're committed to accomplishing. And as you can imagine, that takes consistency. It requires daily action steps, just like your physical fitness. If you really want to get in shape, optimize for your health, lose the weight, gain the muscle, what do you have to do? You have to go to the gym I shouldn't say every day, but several times a week. You have to dedicate yourself to the cause, and you have to be consistent with it, right? Consistency is the key to success in anything and everything. Same for your nutrition. You want to further optimize for your health. We know that you need to be disciplined with your diet, eat the right foods, not eat junk food, things like that are going to sabotage the results that you're attempting to create. So it is the exact same way as your physical fitness. And it's important to understand that just like your body, your brain is capable of regeneration. It is. The unfortunate thing is that we can't undo neural pathways, but we can build ones on top of them. So if you have a belief, for example, that I don't belong here, or that I'm a disappointment, or that I'm not good enough, there is no way to undo the neural pathway that stores that belief. But what you can do is you can create a new one on top of it that with enough consistency, with enough repetition, will begin to override it. So if you're listening and you're like, wow, okay, what do I need to do? What are some action steps that I can take to, make progress in this area of my life or in my business? It really starts with determining what is the issue beneath the issue. What is actually stopping you? So if you are struggling with confidently standing behind an offer, for example, making a call to action, in all likelihood, it's because you don't trust yourself, right? Confidence is just self-trust, right? So what happened to you that caused you to lose trust in yourself? Figuring out where that came from. If you're like that prospective client I mentioned, you struggle to ask for the sale. You struggle to ask for the money, even though you know exactly how to run a structured enrollment call, right? It's probably because you fear being rejected, right? Figuring out what is actually the real challenge here for you, and then instilling new action steps, new behavior patterns that force you to create the results that it is that you're actually looking for. And it starts with your belief systems. So like I said, for myself, it was determining, okay, what were the residual beliefs that came from my core wound? It was, I don't belong here. It was, I'm not accepted. I'm not lovable. And it was creating new beliefs around it. So I would literally write down these new beliefs on my bathroom mirror, on my closet mirror, and I would look at them before I would go to bed every night, when I woke up every single day. And then I would, of course, take action, right? Because it's not a belief just to adopt, affirmations or things like that. You actually have to take action. So for example, I put on a workshop this past August, and it required me to enroll everyone to come. As you can imagine, this had me bump up against my old belief systems, especially because it was a new experience. It wasn't something that I had done before, right? So my brain is now in conscious incompetence, and my ego is wanting to protect me from old experiences from happening again, right? It's what it's designed to do. Threats, keep me from these supposed threats. And so when it came time to enroll people, I hit a brick wall, because I was like, what if they don't come? What if they don't show up? What if they say they're going to show up and then they don't? Right? And so my ego, what does it want to do? It wants to stop enrolling people. and it wants to not be consistent with inviting people to actually show up and invite them to take action and come to the event. But the awareness that I have around my ego allows me to notice that, okay, this is my ego attempting to pull me back into alignment with my core conflict, right? With that belief, that old belief that doesn't serve me. I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I don't belong here. I'm a disappointment. Which means that I get to do the very thing that scares me. And at the same time, I get to learn what it's teaching me. What is this trying to teach me? Because I actually only needed 25 people to show up for the workshop. I ended up having 45 people show up to the workshop. So that awareness allowed me to continue to invite people, even though on a physical level within my body, it brought up anxiety, it brought up anxiousness and fear and all of these doubts about what might happen. But I know that that's exactly how my ego is constructed. All it can see is what it stands to lose and not what it stands to gain. So if you're developing a new offer for your fitness business, or you're looking to raise your prices, for example, and you feel fear around it, go into the fear, unpack the fear, dissect the fear. What is fear trying to teach you in this moment? What is it attached to? Where does it come from? And create awareness around it so that you can then create a belief that is needed to generate the result that you're trying to create. Right? So, for example, I'm hosting a retreat in Costa Rica in April, and it's requiring me to put down the money to secure the booking before I've ever enrolled anybody. Right? And as you can imagine, it's a lot of money. I'm looking to invite like 16 people. It's in a foreign country. It's at like a 5-star luxury, eco-friendly mountain resort. Gorgeous. Money that I really don't have in this moment. So the belief that I've adopted in order to step into the opportunity is I have limitless abundant resources. I have more than enough. I am more than enough. And then I simply align my actions with that level of awareness, with those new beliefs, knowing that the result is on the other side, regardless of how I feel about it.
Love this, man. I resonate so much with everything that you say. Really do. I believe in this stuff so much. And what I refer to this kind of way of being is quantum identity. So, you know, quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
And the field, some people call it the God particle, people call it faith. I believe that a lot of the things that you've been speaking about are intertwined with that field, the quantum field, which is very deep stuff, but underpins everything.
Totally. And it's universal law. So if there's a part of you that, if you're listening, that's like, okay, this is very woo-woo, it really doesn't matter what you think about it. It is universal law. So within, so without. The results that you have in your life right now in every area, health, wealth, relationships, personal, professional, does not matter. It is simply a reflection, a direct reflection of your relationship with you and the conversations that you are having with yourself about yourself. It's universal law. It's the law of correspondence. So within, so without.
This has been extremely insightful, man. Took some really good turns, which I knew it would when we first spoke. And I imagine a lot of people took some interesting paradigm shifts from this talk. And I want to make sure that people can find out more about what you do and your jam and even your retreat. So if anyone's listening to this, Jake, where should they head to find out more about you? Absolutely.
Instagram is the best place to find me. It is my full name, so it's just at Jacob Kauffman. That's JACOB KAUFFMAN. I'm constantly posting content there. If you are interested in the retreat, just because you brought it up, it is specifically for coaches. But it's for coaches who are constantly finding themselves in a position of giving, which I think is all of us. All of us are looking to make a difference, have an impact in the lives of others. But yet, when you talk to people in this space, you know, and we talk about sleep, right? one of the biggest things that we struggle with the most is receiving and resting and allowing ourselves to be refilled and rejuvenate. And so that's actually the intention of my retreat. It's not business related. It's really connection related, and allowing ourselves to intentionally create a space that we can step into that will allow us to receive and rejuvenate in a way that will then allow our cup to overflow so that we can give back to the people that we serve. So at Jacob Kauffman on Instagram, would be happy to connect with you there. Again, Alex, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Keep doing the amazing work that you're doing, Jake, and really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, brother. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy it, I'd be really grateful if you could leave a short review on one of the platforms. And if you're a personal trainer in a commercial gym with 500 plus members and you want to fast track your income growth and learn how to sign multiple new clients a week, reach out to me personally through Facebook or Instagram and just drop me a private message so we can get the conversation started and see if you could be a good fit for one of our programs. All the links to my social can be found in the show notes, so we can connect there. See you next week.